I retired from having a regular job at the age of 32, and looking back, there were three money rules that made it possible. And none of them were stop buying coffee, and none of them required me to have a huge salary. The first rule was this: I stopped asking what I could afford to buy, and I started asking what could I afford to own. And there's a massive difference. It's a massively different trajectory. Most of us are taught to use our income to improve our lifestyle. You make more money, so you get a nicer car, maybe a bigger house, better stuff, keep up with the Joneses. We've all heard that. I started thinking about money very differently a long time ago. When money first came into my life, I wanted to convert as much of it as I reasonably could into something that could keep producing value after the money was gone. And that's eventually what led me toward real estate. But the principal matters more than the investment. Income is very temporary. Ownership can outlive the paycheck that it bought. Which brings us to rule number 2. I cared more about reducing the amount of money I needed than looking wealthy. This one is completely backwards from the way a lot of people approach money. People usually think financial freedom means earning some enormous amount of money. But there's another side of that equation. How much does your life require every month? Because every permanent expense you add to your life creates another little obligation your future self has to satisfy. I didn't want a life that required me to keep running faster just to maintain it. I wanted the opposite. I wanted my financial obligations low enough that eventually my assets could carry them without me. And that brings me to rule number 3. This was the biggest one. I measured wealth in time, not dollars. A bigger bank account wasn't the ultimate goal. Getting control of my life was. I wanted to wake up without somebody else owning the next 8 or 10 or more hours of my day. That's why I don't consider someone wealthy, just because they have a huge income. If your entire lifestyle collapses the moment you stop working, you might be highly paid, but you're still dependent on that next paycheck, and you know it. Eventually, the income from my assets became enough that working a job was optional. I was only 32. And here's what surprises people. That didn't make me stop working. It changed why I worked. I could spend my time on things I actually cared about because survival was no longer attached to every hour. That's the distinction I wish somebody had explained to me much earlier. So don't just ask, how can I make more money? Ask, how can I turn the money I already make into more ownership, fewer obligations, and more control over my time? Those 3 questions can send your financial life in a completely different direction and trajectory. And if that's the kind of wealth you're trying to build, subscribe. I'm not interested in teaching you how to look rich. I'm interested in helping you become financially difficult to control.